Today we're looking at a book that combines elements of several different martial arts in order to cover a lot of the bases of self-defense. Hi guys, my name is Joe and welcome to Fighting Words, the martial arts library. On this channel, I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related topics. So today I will be reviewing the book Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu by Dr. Marc Bochner. I have a second edition which was published in 2007. Now, Dr. Bochner, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, is a licensed physical therapist. He's also been studying martial arts from a young age and actually specializes in Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu. Now, one of the first things to note is this book is actually pretty massive. It's over 300 pages. It has over 40 chapters, and as I mentioned, it covers a lot of different topics related to self-defense. The early chapters of the book cover basically the history of Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu, including the biography of the founder, that would be Richard Petronelli. It then goes into an overview of the different martial arts that were studied and combined to create Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu. There's an emphasis on studying Miyama-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu as well as studying under Professor V, who brought a lot of arnis to the equation. Following that, we get into the physical fitness side of things. This includes an extensive amount of warm-ups and exercises, including some impact training, what they refer to as makiwara training. It's not with a traditional makiwara that practitioners of karate would be used to, but it does include things like striking things like bricks and even doing impact training on one another's forearms and things to that effect. And there's even a small but important section on hydration for martial arts training. After that, we get several chapters that cover quite an array of concepts. For instance, the difference between self-defense and fighting, like challenge matches. They write a lot about things like fear and intuition. They actually reference Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear quite frequently in this section. There's a lot of talk about having a survival mindset, talk about neurology, and basically in that section it's referring to things that relate to reaction time. We also get things like different fighting ranges, different strategies, and the factors that make for effective hand strikes. Now, my general impression of these past few chapters, I think that there is a lot of good stuff in there. I also think there are a few things that might require some further investigation and reflection. In other words, they sound okay initially, but I think that perhaps one should investigate them a little bit further to see if they hold up. Finally, we get into the technique section. We get a brief overview of stance, and then the first striking section, there's a lot on hand techniques. These include the fundamental boxing punches, as well as things like eye pokes and eye rakes, palm strikes, back fists, hammer fists. They prefer to place the thumb on top of the fist as opposed to folding it over the knuckles. After that, we get into some basic kicks. These are all kept below the waist, but should be recognizable to most practitioners of striking martial arts. And from there, they list 4 clinch positions. So their clinch positions include the front clinch or Muay Thai clinch. I dislike that term because Muay Thai has more than one clinch, but I understand what they mean. The next clinch is what they refer to as a side clinch, which is basically an underhook with an outside collar tie. Then they include double overhooks, wrapping over both the arms, and then double underhooks, which is wrapping under both the arms. Conspicuous by its absence is the over-under clinch, where it also sometimes known as the 50-50 clinch, where you have one overhook, one underhook. It's actually pretty common. It just seems a little unusual that they would not include that, or really any clinch transitions, because the over-under happens usually while you're working for a double underhook or body lock situation. But again, these sections are mostly just showing the different clinch positions. After that, we get into striking combinations. And these are just demonstrations of striking combinations at various distances and with various striking tools, like kicks, elbows, punches. This is where I start to sort of rankle under some of the terminology that they're using, because they seem to be referring to every straight punch as a cross. Following that, we get a section on weak points. This is pretty common in most self-defense material, talking about the type of locations that you would want to strike on your opponent's anatomy in order to get the best effect. And after that, we have what they call quick strikes from a casual position. For those of you who are familiar with Jeff Thompson's fence position, they don't use the term fence, but this seems very close to that. But basically a casual position, and from there you throw a punch, or from there you throw an elbow. From there they get into various street fighting scenarios with trained and untrained opponents. As someone who might be in the place of one of these trained opponents, again, there are some places where I'm like, yeah, with my background in that thing, I wouldn't do that, but okay. I think from a reader's standpoint, one of the things that is a negative of this section is that we see some techniques being used in here that have not been introduced yet in the book. They are in later sections, things like throws and locks. I do like the idea that they are providing these various strategies against both trained and untrained opponents. But again, I question the authenticity of some of them. After that, we get into a little bit more in the way of movement. To me, it seems like this is a little bit out of place, like it might have been better served to be closer to the beginning of the book. Footwork often follows stance in many books like this. But yeah, we get a section on footwork, and they cover quite a variety of footwork with various patterns, including some that will be readily recognizable from the Filipino martial arts. Now, while they don't have an extensive defensive section, they do show defenses against the 5 basic angles of attack. So those are, the quadrants of the body as well as straight down the middle. And after that, we get ukemi, which is falling and rolling, in order to land safely if you're being thrown or if you trip. After that is where they start to get into sections taken from specific martial arts. We're about to get into the Jiu-Jitsu section. And that is basically comprised of standing locks and some lock flows. So wrist locks, finger locks, things of that nature. After that, we get into a judo section where it talks about some recognizable throws. Luckily, it does cover the concept of kuzushi and off-balancing. After that, it covers some more wrestling-style takedowns, as well as ground positions with some finishing attacks. Honestly, this is the section that I would be most critical of. I would say in multiple parts of this section, there are important details that are missing. I understand that this is meant to be an introductory book, but there are some make or break details that are being left out of this. After that, we get an arnis section, which is focused on stick fighting and knife fighting. This could almost be a book unto itself. We begin with single stick flow drills with a partner, followed by 12 points of attack. This might be considered the 12 angles of attack in different systems. We get some disarms, whether it's single stick versus single stick or single stick versus empty hand. If you're empty-handed, how to disarm someone with a stick. Then there's a knife portion, including different grips, different flow drills, again with a partner, and some empty hand versus knife defenses, sort of finish up that section. Next, we get into the section with the sets. And some of these would resemble something that you might find in, for instance, Parker Lineage Kempo, where someone throws a strike and you respond with a series of strikes of your own. Some of these more closely resemble what we might find in traditional jiu-jitsu, which is defenses against grabs. Now again, this is meant to be an introductory text, so for instance, we don't get the entirety of their te sets. We get, for instance, set 1, set 3A and 3B, set 6, we don't get the breadth of everything in the curriculum. But in this, again, we get hand techniques used against striking techniques. We get sets on how to use your kicks against an opponent. And again, we get self-defense against mugging attacks, which are, usually grabs of some type. And toward the back of the book, we start to get the more advanced ideas. For instance, we get a section on, strategies against multiple attackers. There's a chapter on scenario training where it presents you in text, no pictures, with you're experiencing various scenarios, like someone tries to mug you at an ATM, for instance, and it provides some solutions to those problems. We also get defense against gun threats. We get defense against sexual assault. There's a few techniques for that, mostly groundwork. And we also get modified techniques for practitioners of Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu who are, for instance, bound to a wheelchair, or if they are elderly and do not have the same physical spryness as a younger person. And it finishes up with a series of appendices. One talks about who gets attacked. What is an attacker looking for in a victim? The one following that, which is a good follow-on, is how to not become a victim. And finally, there's an appendix on injury rehab. And the author's specialty in physical therapy really comes into play in that section. And finally, it finishes up with biographies of the author and also some of the contributors to this book. As far as the pros go, the most obvious thing that stands out is that this is a big book that covers a broad range of topics. If you're looking for something that covers, for instance, defense against a knife, defense against a gun, how to use a stick for fighting, and various strikes, this is a book that you could pick up and it would address all those things. I also like a lot of the work put in at the beginning about the various concepts that one should use for self-defense. Some of the more mental stuff, like, dealing with your own fear and, listening to your own intuition. I like a lot of the physical fitness stuff. They have some complexes, squat complex and push-up complex that I'm eager to try out. As far as the negatives go, I have a bone to pick with a lot of the technical stuff. I would say in particular the groundwork and some of the stuff shown in the sets. I am going to go into particulars in a second, but briefly I would say that there's a lot of stuff that's presented in this book that's been done better in other sources. I'm about to get into some of the particulars regarding ground positions, submissions, and some of the set defenses. So if you'd like to skip to the recommendation part, this would be the time. Okay, for half guard, they're showing the guy flat on his back. You don't need to be flat on your back for half guard. That you're effectively pinning yourself. You need to be on your side, which gives you more mobility. It prevents the person from restricting your own movements. For the rear naked choke submission that they use here, they have the hand on top of the head. Even if the guy is untrained, he might instinctively pull your hand down, pull it away. That's why most trained people, when it comes to that submission, will go behind the head. He shows a position, and this is a problem throughout the book. Sometimes the terminology doesn't quite match up. I mentioned earlier that they refer to all straight punches as a cross in one of the sequences, but just a couple pages before had talked about a jab. Well, they have a position that's known as the judo position, but also the side headlock position. They're the same position, but for the sake of uniformity of terminology, they really should just pick one and go with it. this is missing a key detail. If you're going to put someone in what's in judo would be called a scarf hold, you need to shelve their near shoulder on your thigh so they can't turn into you. If they can turn into you, they can escape behind your back, they can roll you over the top and put you on the bottom. It's sort of a thing that makes the position work, and if you don't have it, it's a bad position suddenly. In one of their Tay sequences, all of them seem to fall into the frankly rather common problem of when your opponent attacks, they'll just leave their arm out there, so you do whatever you want to them. I like the term Bruce Lee used for things like that. He can refer to it as dissecting the corpse. But there's one in particular, I think it was 3B, where the guy swings a punch, and you stop it with a hammer fist, but he leaves his arm out there, so you grab it and you hammer fist it again. But he leaves his arm out there, so you hammer fist it a third time, and it's not going to happen. It's physics, man. Look what happens if I hit an arm. It's going to move away. You know, it has been acted upon by an outside force. It's not going to hang out there. And it's possible that I skipped some part of the text that mentioned why there was a purpose for things like this, but that's a problem with some of these sequences is, you know, there's another one where the guy stops an attack and then, like, smack his nose with the front of the fist and then hit him with a back fist and then hit him with, you know, a hammer fist on this side and a hammer fist on that. Like, you hit the guy 4 times and he's just standing there. That's not going to happen. You know, that's my problem with some of the physical techniques in the book. All right, as far as recommendations go, I mentioned I do like the preparatory work. I do like a lot of the stuff toward the end of it. It's the techniques that I have a problem with. I think if you are already part of a good physical martial arts program, you know, if you can fight, if you already know what a good half guard looks like, if you spar on a regular basis, and you know how a human body reacts when you hit it with a punch, then I think that you can ignore the technique section and really look at, again, the preparatory stuff, like the fitness stuff, the injury rehab, the mindset stuff. I really like those parts. For me, that is what I would primarily use this text for. Alternatively, if you are part of a Kuntao Jiu-Jitsu school, this could be a study guide. Go ahead and get it for that purpose. But again, if it were up to me, I would ignore a lot of the, especially the empty hand technique stuff, because I've seen it just done better in so many other sources. You don't need it. But again, I do like, you know, the mindset stuff, the referencing to Mr. De Becker, you know, the exercise stuff I like. So there are good things in this book. Learn how to fight from something else. Probably one-on-one training with a good coach. But yeah, that would be my recommendation. Ignore the empty hand technical stuff, but embrace the things on physical fitness, things on rehab, you know, the warm-ups, mindset, all that stuff. I think all that, if it is not 100% good, I'd say it's still about 85 to 90% good, and I think that that's where the value in this book lies. So, thank you for watching. If you'd like to help out the channel, or if you have a suggestion for a book for me to review, please consider donating to my Ko-fi account. That's where I'm taking my suggestions from these days. And it would really help me out a lot if you would like the video, if you'd share it, and leave a comment on what you think about my review. Was there anything you would disagree with, anything you have additional information on? Again, thank you very much, and I'll see you later.